Hey guys, it's me again. I'm going to teach you how to do the double break stitch in this earring tutorial. Still going to work the fringe, still going to be the same concept as far as the pattern that we're working in, which is the break stitch. But instead of doing a singular break stitch, working our way up, we're going to do a double like this. This foundation row is the same as the first tutorial where I used 2 beads per column, but that was just the foundational row. So you can see how different it looks with the singular workup. See? That's 1 bead at a time. Whereas this guy, there are 2 beads at a time per row. So, same pattern work, just doubling the beads per row. Okay, so that's that one. We did that one, and now we're going to do this one. So, I included this little guy in it, my little octopus guy. You can opt out of that. You can do the same thing. You can do different colors. That's cool. I'm going to refer to them as background color and octopus color. So we start out like the first tutorial where we have 4 seed beads and we use them as the first 2 columns of that foundation. Pliers. Okay, so there's our first 2 columns. As you can see, my beads look a little different from each other. One's glossy, one's metallic. I just did that for accent. You don't have to do that. I just wanted to keep it interesting for myself. So the first 3 columns are going to be your background color. And then the 4th column, we're going to start the octopus color. Okay. So there we go, 3. So now we're going to get 1 background color and 1 octopus color. We want the octopus color to be on the bottom. That's going to be the bottom bead. And since we're working up through the previous column, like that, the octopus bead is going to go on the needle second. Like that. And now we work down through. So the next column is going to be red, the octopus color, and then the eyeball. I used a turquoise bead for the eyeball. So octopus color and then eyeball, like that. Work down through the top of that one. And pull it tight. Not too tight. Tight enough. And then up through. And so the next 4 columns we're going to work, that's going to be the rest of the body. It's going to be 4 octopus colors. So 4 columns of the octopus color. And then the eyeball on the top and the octopus color on the bottom, just like the first one. And then you work the last 1, 2, 3, 4 columns, just like the first 4. Make sure that background color is the top bead and the octopus color is the bottom bead. And then the last 3 will be the background color. Just like that. Okay, so go back through that bottom bead in the previous column and just work up through that first bead from the bottom. Sorry. And then you're going to scooch over and go up that top bead in the last column so that the tail is poking out the top. And we're going to build on the top of the foundation and not the bottom. And that's because we used an even number of columns for that foundation row. So the tail came out the same end as the other little tail. So that won't do. So the first 2 columns on the second row are going to be the background color. Just like that. And then down through that first column. It's important to go back down through and then come back up through this second column so you can really secure that beginning bit of the row. So now we get another 2 beads of background color. And then the next column will be 2 octopus colors, or 2 octopus beads. And then you'll work this color all the way to the other side of the eyeball. And then the last 3 columns will be the background color. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 6. 1, 2. Just like that. And I'm going to show you how to start it again, just so it can really stick in that brain. So we have 2 columns of background color, which is 4 beads. You always start out with your double column. So even if you're working singular, then you would grab 2 beads because you're doing 2 columns. And a double brick stitch, you grab 4 beads for 2 columns. So you can kind of see my little accent beads in there. They're a little sparse, and then as I get closer to the top of the earring, then I'll use more and more of the metallic glossy guys. And so now you get an octopus column. So 2 beads of the octopus color, because we want his little head to come out wider and wider. But then we'll taper off more sharply with the octopus color instead of just going gradually with the tapering of the earring, because we don't want a cone head. We want an octopus. So then you work the rest in your little octopus color, and then the last 2 columns are going to be the background color, like that. So you grab 2 background beads and 2 octopus beads. And we'll be doing this a few times. And if you decided to do no color work and you're just doing 1 color, then totally disregard all the cues I'm giving as to which colors to switch over to when. That's kind of obvious. Oh, here comes my daughter. Trying to get in the frame. Ah, there she goes. There's her hair. Okay, cool. So now the rest is the octopus head, and then the last column is going to be the background color. Again, 2 background colors and 2 octopus colors. 4 beads, 2 columns. Okay, don't forget to work back through that first column and then up through the second one. Reinforcement. And then the rest is pretty explanatory. Zoink. So now we get 3 background colors and 1 octopus color. Now we're tapering off the shape of the head sharper than we taper the earring itself in the break stitch. So you can see 1, 2, 3, and then the octopus. Back through. See my little orange accents? I hope it comes out well. Sometimes I have ideas and I think it's going to be great, and then it's just terrible. And other times I think, this isn't going to work, but I'm going to just see what it looks like, and then it looks way better than I thought it would ever look. So working with all these different colors sometimes is tricky once it's woven up. And so now we get background color first and then the octopus color. And up through, and then background color for the last column. Okay, so now the first 2 are going to be all background color. And then we'll do 1 more row above this, and then we'll do our little arch for the ear wire. And I guess if you wanted to work up more, higher up, and you didn't want such a big gap for your arch, you could do that too. But I'm trying to give a variety. In the other tutorial, we worked a little bit farther up, but it's just a different shape, different style. I'm going to give you guys options. Okay, so now we started with the background color and then the octopus color. Doink. And so then the next column will be octopus, octopus. So in my case, 2 reds. It keeps getting caught on the pliers. Okay. And so this row will go pretty fast. But that center column right directly above the octopus head, there will be 1 bead that's the octopus color. So the next column will be background color. And then this next column, you get your background color and then octopus color. Make sure the octopus bead is on the bottom, so he doesn't have one little floaty above his head. And if you don't like that little last bead and you want it to be a little, flatter on top, you don't have to do that last bead either. You can work this row all background as well. I wanted to make a simple design in the color work so that you guys could have some creative freedom and make it your own. And then the last two columns will be the background color. And then I'll work one more row, and then we'll do the arch. And there's my other row. And you can work more rows if you want. I grabbed 16 beads total to make my arch. And if you're doing different colors, you can kind of mix it up. You can do more octopus colors. You can do all background color. I like to mix it up. So I did 8 beads on one side and then 8 beads on the other side. So a total of 16. So when I reinforce the arch, I like to thread it down the edge. Yeah. You don't have to go too far. I usually do a row or two above the foundation row. And then I turn my work and I go back up. So here we go through that next column. Just like that. And then I'll creep back up over to my edge. Right there. And then I'll work all the way up the edge. And then I'll seam it up through the arch again. Just so I can reinforce it. You don't have to do it. Like right now, you could just weave in across. But this makes me feel better. Because I've got another strand through the arch. But then it's more of a complex weave through, if that makes sense. This is really, really strong thread though, so don't be afraid if you don't go through that. Man, doesn't want to go through. Jeez, guys. Okay, there it goes. Okay, so once I get down far, maybe 3 or 4 rows, 2 or 3 rows, then I will work across to weave in the end. So now I'm going to go over one column instead of going back down the edge. Now I'm working back and forth, side to side, instead of up and down. So now I'm just going to do a zigzag through that whole row, just like that. And then I'll work my way down, just to make sure it's really secure and it's not going to come out. Oh, sorry for my frame. I'm going to take you through weaving in the ends for this video so you have a good idea of what I do. You might find a better method. You might want to do more up and down, less back and forth, however you want to do it. But just when I think that, oh, I've woven it in plenty, I do just a couple of more steps just to be safe. See, like here, I could have just started going down, but I went over one more. So now I'm going to work my way down. And the brick stitch, that's the way it stacks, the nature of it kind of helps create its own little zigzag when you work up and down. It's not just a straight shot. So now I'm feeling pretty damn confident about this. And then look, oh no, I'll go up one more. Haha, tricked you. Okay, now, okay. I mean, this thing's not going to come apart. It is not. I get kind of excited at this point. Oh. See, your scissors have to be really sharp for this stuff. I get excited at this point though because now it's fringe time. Which, interestingly enough, fringe is not my favorite part. This part is my favorite part, and then I would like to just be done with it. But that feeling of seeing it all come together when you get those last strands of the fringe feels really good too. And then, I don't know about you guys, but I've never been a fan of weaving in, obviously. But there we go. Now it's time for the fringe. So if you're using a nylon thread, you'll probably be using a single thread. But I double mine up because I use all-purpose cotton thread. And again, I like to start pretty high up so that the beads hold on to my thread. And I don't want to weave it in because if I mess up my color work, or if I need to adjust the tension or the give or the slack in the fringe, I have that to work with. It gives me, it's like a security measure. So there's my first strand, and I counted 45 beads. You skip that first bead, and then you work in through the second bead, and then all the way up the rest of them. If you don't skip that first bead and you start working up it, you will lose all of your beads on your thread. They'll just right off. I've done it. You just need to pay attention. And then once you get through the whole strand, you work up through those first two beads in that column. I like to work on this side. I like to start on the side that doesn't have the little tail from my foundation row because it's tighter. And there's a lot of movement here when you first start establishing your fringe, and I just don't want to do that at my at the beginning of my foundation row. And then we go down through the second column. So they just kind of like hug on that foundation row. Doink, like that. And so the first 3 strands will be the background color. And then that third strand is when your first tentacle starts. So again, I counted 45 beads. You don't have to do 45, but that was just what I liked. And as far as the tentacles go, there was no rhyme or reason. My first tentacle, I measured out 36 beads, and then I worked a little background color at the bottom. But I didn't taper it. I didn't make it go straight across. I kind of had it jagged to give it more of an organic feel. Because when you look at an octopus kind of maneuvering through the water, his tentacles kind of flow every which direction. And it has a lot of movement to it. So I felt like if I did a little jagged bit at the bottom of the fringe, it would kind of imply that. And then of course I had to add my little orange accents. And so you can see the little slack right there between the the fringe bead and the foundation bead. That's okay, you'll see that a lot, but you can just tug on it, twist the beads on the strands a little bit like I'm doing right there. And it just helps them find their little place in the world. And I really do fiddle with the strands as I'm working across the earring. And just before and after I weave in all my ends, or each end. You can never double check, triple check, quadruple check too much when it comes to your fringe. And so now you work all the tentacles, 7 more. Okay, so here I'm at the middle. So if you want, you can like straight up mirror this first half of the fringe that you did, just to be on the safe side, I'm going to kind of fiddle around with it and kind of go with it organically. And here, if you want to do the fringe longer, you can. If you want to do it shorter, you can. And just work exactly the same for the second half of the earring. And so now I have enough for one more strand, and then I have a tail long enough to comfortably weave that in. If you try to work that last bit on a new strand, you're not going to have much to tie it off, and you don't want to knot your thread in the middle of a strand. It's just not cute. It's not secure. I don't recommend it. Skip that first bead and work your way up the strand like all the other ones. I still sometimes forget to skip that bead, or I thought I skipped the bead, and I start working up it, and then there goes all my beads. Okay. Almost there. He's really coming together. He's so fancy. And then here, I normally do not weave it in. I will feed it up through to the top of the woven portion of the earring, and then I leave it open. And then I'll work the rest of the fringe, and then I'll snip everything, and I'll have all my live ends, and I'll check my colors, and I'll check my work. And once everything's a go, then I weave in all my ends. But here, I checked it, and I just want to go ahead and show you how I weave it in. So I work all the way up, and then down. And so you're most likely going to have to work another bit of thread to finish out your fringe. That's just the way it happens. Unless you're doing, fewer number of columns, or you're doing really short fringe. But typically you're going to have to start a new thread. I will measure out 60 inches. Literally just pull the thread from the spool, and I outstretch both arms, and that's the length that I use. And if you try to get any more than that, it's going to be hard to work with. And any less than that, you're going to be starting new thread more often. So that's just my sweet spot, but you'll find your groove. You'll find what you like. So here's my new thread. And I'm starting from, pretty much the top, high enough up, so that when I come out of that next column of the foundation row, my thread is pretty snug up in the woven bit. And again, I left it live in case I screw up my colors. Okay, get it down through here. I particularly don't like using delicas. I don't like the shape of the fringe when they come out. They look really great on woven part, the woven portion of your work, or anything that involves just woven and not fringe. But I still kind of don't favor it. The colors in that shape of bead are fantastic. It's almost limitless. Whereas with seed beads, you're much more limited. But I work within those confines. And there we go. So we have that left to do. One more tentacle. now we're done, and I carried it about halfway up the edge of the woven portion, but I think I want to carry it up a little bit more. Yeah, see, just thread it through there. Yeah, probably. A couple more rows should be fine. So go ahead and weave this one in, since I've got the live needle already working on it. And then those other two ends that are hanging around, I will use the big eye needle to weave those in. Of course, if you're using nylon in a single thread, again, you don't need to do that with the big needle, the big eye needle. You can just use the needle that you're working with. But even so, I would still probably grab a big eye needle, because when the tail gets really small, I like to weave it in till I can't weave it in anymore. And the big eye needle really helps with that. And I will show you. And then you have little mishaps like this. It's just part of the process. There you go. And then go up. Can never be too safe. And there you have it. So these last three ends will be woven in with the large eye needle. And this is it. This is what the little package looks like. I like the Beadsmith brand over the Beadalon, because the Beadsmith brand is a little bit bigger and the metal is rough. And so sometimes it can bust your beads or break your thread. And here I left this in because I wanted you guys to see sometimes it's not always easy to open it, so sometimes I'll use the tip of my other needle to open it, to thread it through, just like that. So now we're going to weave these guys in, but before I do that, I really take a moment to feel my fringe, because sometimes they can get very loose or very tight. So I tug on it and I pull back and forth, loosening, tightening, twisting the beads back and forth along the thread, just so they feel really, really good and lax but not loose. And so even though I have the thread at this end, I can still see how the thread slides down. So that's what I love about these needles and how versatile they are in that respect. You can't do that with the other type of needle, because the thread will stay at one end of the needle, whereas here it can slide down the belly of the needle because it's a large eye. Sometimes it'll get stuck because the thread bunches, but it's not that big of a deal. That's why my pliers are here. And another thing I wanted to demonstrate here is how bendy these guys are. There is a drawback when you're bending them a lot after you've woven in so many ends on so many pieces, because they don't bounce back to that straight shape again. And that's okay, because they're really cheap and you can buy a lot of them and they're easily replaceable. See how bendy that is? After a while, it'll kind of lose its straight shape, and then you have to move to a new big eye needle. Which even sometimes when they're super bent, they actually are in a position that works for me. So I can really weave in tiny little ends and just milk it all the way to the very last millimeter. And you can be kind of rough with them and it's fine. See, sometimes that happens too. So now this very last end, this is probably the only end I enjoy weaving in because one, it's a lot easier than the other ones I was working with, but it means I'm done. And I like to weave it in over the fringe ends because I don't want to weave this end in and then not get out of place when I'm weaving in the fringe ends. And see, here's a perfect example of when you try to get your needle through a column of beads that are just at max capacity. So I had to find another way. And I did. I found another path that will work just fine. And I think we can get one or two more columns out of that. There we go. Oh my gosh, this is the best part. It's the best part. Great. Okay, just grab the lighter and singe that end. Perfect. And there you have it. Again, mess with your fringe. You can never adjust the fringe too much. And there's another thing I do to kind of set them in place that I'll show in another video. So here we go, and now it's time for the ear wire. And so we find our pretty side. The pretty side is the side we weren't weaving everything in on. That's the woven side that has the exposed thread. So I like to put that side on the back and this side on the front. So now the ear wire, the pointy part goes towards the back and the curved part goes towards the front. So you just line those things up. And, oh, now we're out of frame. Fantastic. Okay. So you just make sure the pretty side is lined up with the curved side and that you don't frustrate yourself too much here like I'm doing. And when you finally get it to where you want it to be, make sure you only grab the metal, because if you accidentally grab the beads, they will bust. It doesn't take much pressure at all. And there you go. Yay. There we go. So here's your little guy. Yay. And second verse, same as the first. I hope this helped, y'all. Thanks.